Okay, 3 o'clock, Yerushalayim. We're starting, Baruch Hashem. Glad to have everybody here, especially those who are watching at home. I don't know who you are, but I appreciate every person who's watching. Be'ezer Hashem, we're doing the shir and putting it online so that to bring people closer to understanding the wonderful parts of the Torah and the validity of Judaism, and to keep me busy, Baruch Hashem. So, yesterday we left off with the explanation of the rabbi to the king that when Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Torah to the Jewish people, we received all the details that we need in order to serve Hashem. There was nothing missing from it. And I gave a few examples, and we ended up, the last example was a bris, and then the poor person poured hot tea on himself, got all scared, and we're going to redo the bris, but we're glad to tell everybody that he's fine, he survived the ordeal, and everything is okay. So that's where we are. Now, this passage ends with a statement that could be very controversial. It doesn't have to be. I wouldn't mind if an argument would burst in the room. No throwing chairs. We're not doing Jerry Springer. We're going to behave ourselves. But it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for a few of you. And here's what he says. For in the service of God, there's no place for estimation. There's no place for logic. And there's no place for common sense. We do what Hashem has told us. That's it. There isn't, I'm sure that they didn't mean to take a giant asparagus and wave it around in October. There's no way. Right? I saw there was a guy interviewed about New York. And he said, New York is a very strange city. And they said to him, why? He says, well, I was walking in the street and all of a sudden these two young men stopped me. And they asked me if we were Jewish and they were holding a giant asparagus and a lemon. So, if we try to figure out what the Torah means according to our intellect, that's not how it works. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah, told us what it is, and we live according to those laws. Now, if that's true, then what do we say about learning Gemara? That's very logical. It requires reasoning. It requires the argument of back and forth. So the idea, I think, is there. We're just trying to understand the principles that God set up for us. And that we are trying to recapture the oral Torah that is hidden in the various psukim, the verses in the Torah, to see what can we derive from different psukim according to the tradition. That is, the rabbis in the Gemara never come up with something on their own and say, hey, I got an idea, it's this. Whatever they are saying, they're telling you this in the name of the Rabbi that taught them. And he's saying what he's saying because he received it from his Rabbi, going all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not that we have a tabula rasa, right, a clean sheet of paper, where we now are starting to imprint our own understanding of how to serve Hashem. We have been given the Torah, it has everything that we need, and then we move on from this point forward. Questions? Excellent. Let's keep going. Azrieli did not have a question today. I know it's early. We're only 10 minutes into class, only 5 minutes into the shir. You've got time. So the king says, such mitzvahs, such commandments from God, is something that a person wants to accept without doubting and without any problem. Because it came from, or the process, says the king, went from a prophet to slaves who were under the thumb of the Egyptians, and they left exactly when they were told they were going to leave. They left exactly how they were told to leave. Okay, so that they were told, listen, there's going to be this plague, this is what's going to happen, and exactly it happened. There's going to be this one, and you're going to leave. He's going to tell you you're going to have to leave, and we're not leaving at night. We're going to leave during the day. We're not like thieves running away. We're going to have a nice big parade and leave Egypt on our terms. And not only that, all the Egyptians are going to give us their tchotchkes, right, all the gold, and they're going to give it to us, and we're going to take it with us, and we're going to go to the desert, and the whole thing. And it's exactly what happened. And this prophet told them that they're going to Canaan, who was now under the control of the 7 different nations. Call that 7 different city-states. Maybe there's more city-states than that. It's probably more than 7. But they belong to these 7 confederations, the different nations. And he tells them that the entire land that they're going to conquer is going to be divided among them. And they see great miracles. They see the greatness of God. And they see the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu. And now the king takes a turn. And this turn is very, very important, because I think that every Jew who loves Hashem, follows the Torah, tries to do the right thing, has this particular question in their mind. He says, what if that prophet, in our case Moshe Rabbeinu, said, I was sent to guide all humanity. So he says, if that were the case, his teachings probably would not reach half of the world. And if it would not have been fully completed, his task, we would certainly doubt the role of that prophet. And then if he did not fulfill the divine plan, we would also start doubting the intention of God. So if God wanted the entire world to be Jewish or follow the Torah, Torahist, let's call it that for a second, and Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to convert the entire world, and he didn't, because it wasn't really humanly possible, and he was only able to do, let's say, half, still pretty good, right? But it would make us look at Moshe Rabbeinu differently. We would ask him, what was your job? What did Hashem tell you to do? Convert everybody in the world. Well, did you? No. Did you do 50%? Yes. So you fulfilled 50% of what God told you to do. Is that a weakness in you? Well, probably. Is it also a weakness in God's plan? Because God failed. That's where the king is going. Now, one of the major obstacles, says the king to Moshe Rabbeinu, is that your text given by God is not in English. It doesn't say that. I'm translating it. It's in Hebrew. And most of the world doesn't speak Hebrew. Even in Korea, people think that in Korea everybody's learning Gemara. That's not true, by the way. And they don't speak Hebrew. I had somebody go to Korea and I said, just speak Hebrew to everybody. Things didn't go well. So he says, the nations of India, of Ethiopia, and the Khazars don't speak Hebrew. And it would take them hundreds of years in order to have the proficiency of the language in order to be able to read the text. And even if they would have accepted the Torah or Moses' religion, whether he forced them through war or whether because of the proximity and relationship that he would have with them, they would convert willfully. But he says it would be a real problem. It would take a long time. Now comes the question that I think many people ask. I ask this. If we believe the Torah is true, why don't we go door to door? Shalom Aleichem. I always like to talk to you about Moses. No? Aaron's like, no. Why not? If you have the truth. I think this is not recording anymore and I didn't touch it. Because you want to come and look at this? How do you know? It says 0000. I didn't do it. Due to technical difficulties, if you can't hear this, call for help.
Was it playing before?
Yes. Yeah, if you run back the video, you see I say there's 5 minutes in the sheet. That's because I knew 5 minutes. I didn't touch it. And I didn't even bang very hard. Your watch. So you say no, Aaron. Why not? If you have the truth, don't you have a moral obligation to tell people what the truth is? No? Just let them live in ignorance?
Doesn't say to do that.
I'm just saying, just outside, not in the Torah.
Maybe it would be a nice thing. Maybe it would help them. But
Yeah, Sam.
Could you make the argument that God, since we're quote unquote the chosen ones, that all the other people in the world aren't worthy of, learning Torah and being Jewish?
What? Everybody can become Jewish.
Yeah, but we say we don't proselytize.
We don't proselytize. Proselytize. Yeah, we speak English, not Brooklynese.
Push them away.
We push people away.
Please go ahead.
We push people away. Yeah, you say you want to come to Ohr Somayach. We're like, no. Can we get a room? No. Breakfast? No, forget it. From Texas? No way.
Some people get breakfast, yeah?
Some people get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Plus, apparently, steaks. The rabbis don't, or at least some rabbis don't. Okay. The king is pointing out something. And he's saying, part of the validity of Judaism is because it was a very confined task. Take these people out of Egypt, make them follow the Torah, which was doable. He did it. Moshe Rabbeinu did it. And then it becomes evidence to the validity of the Torah. And then he says, but imagine if it were make the entire world, then the prophet didn't do so well. So then we're going to look at the two other world religions that say that they came, their message was to convert the entire world. So we know that in Christianity, with their religious leader, he actually was able to get about 12 people, maybe a few more. But that was it. But he was killed. Well, wasn't that the whole point of him? He needed to die. Otherwise, if he didn't die, then you wouldn't have a religion. I don't quite understand that story yet, but okay. And in Islam, it was also supposed to be a world religion. Well, at the time that Muhammad died, that wasn't the case. It wasn't. It was a religion of the Arabs in Arabia. And it is only through conquest and the sword that Islam was spread to the majority of the world. When it entered into sort of Southeast Asia, it was less with sword, but more with the pen. It was business. There were merchants, Muslim merchants, sailing in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in all of that area. But in India, for sure, was a sword. Okay. So, says the rabbi, you are correct that Moshe Rabbeinu only called forth for the Jewish people to take the Torah. And that God promised those people to return, that He would send other prophets to make sure that we follow the Torah. And we know that we have a Tanakh, we have the Hebrew Bible, with prophets such as Isaiah and Jeremiah and Amos and Yechezkel and Ezra and Nehemiah. We have lots and lots of prophets that strengthen the teachings of the Torah. So then the king says, well, why wasn't the Torah given to everybody? This is the question. That is, there's one God, correct? Is there one God or not? Man, the energy in this room. People at home are watching this. They're like, come on. Is there one God?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Good news. Baruch Hashem. Yeah! 5? No, there aren't 5.
No. At least in the English translation of the art scroll, I've seen pasuk that said, "Do not pray to other gods."
Like
Is that-
gods of others.
Or does it say that? Do they refer to that as like idols?
Yes. The term, the Rambam in the first parak of the Moreh Nevuchim talks about the term Elohim. And he says it has several meanings. It has a meaning of God. It has a meaning of angels. And it has a meaning of powerful political leaders or judges. And he brings the verses in the Torah to show you that that term actually does have those 3 meanings. So, it depends on, you take the verse and you have to plug it in and see what would happen and how that fits. So, when we say in Shirat Hayam, right, every morning we say the song when the Jewish people sang, and the Siyah reads, Mi chamocha ba'elim, right? Who is like you in the Elim? So what is that Elim? These are the powerful ones. That is, there are angelic powers that exist, that exert some spiritual power. Every nation is guided by an angelic being. And that's what they worship them. They're not supposed to. The Rambam in Ilchot Avodah Zarah explains that human beings started out, all humanity knew that there was one God. They knew it. So what happened? They knew also that God assigned certain powers to certain celestial bodies. The moon and the sun. Those were assigned certain powers, and we live by them. I mean, we need the sun, don't we? We need the moon. We need the various constellations and all of that. so people looked at them as servants of God and said, we have to honor the servants of God because they are his servants. Which is not a bad idea, right? It's not a bad idea that we honor the servants of a powerful king because they work for him, they're very close. So since we honor the king, we also provide respect and honor to that minister. But then they started worshiping them. It was just one step and another step and then another step, and that step was... And that's how the Rambam explains they reached serving physical powers. And had the God of rain, and the God of the sun, and the God of this, and the God of that. And got into a big mess with all of those things. Yeah? Tov. So if there's one God, as we said, and he has one plan for humanity, called the Torah, then why is it that the Torah wasn't given to all humanity together? It's a good question. That is, if this is the plan, shouldn't then Judaism be a universal religion? I like when people try to answer a question in a book, but he wrote the book himself. So I'm sure he has an answer. So, okay. God offered it to other nations and they didn't want it. That's what your answer is. Correct? Okay. So maybe we wouldn't have wanted it if he didn't take us out of Egypt with all the miracles. So maybe they have a just cause to complain. That is, if they had the wonderful miracles that we had, then maybe they would have accepted it. Because they didn't have the miracles. They didn't have the 10 plagues. So I'm just raising that as a point. Did you raise your hand, Al? Would you like to say anything? Louder.
We're supposed to get Torah from the beginning of creation, right?
Not really. Not really. There were there are different stages in the plan of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Tov. He could have given the Torah to Adam HaRishon. What stopped him? But the Torah at the time of Adam HaRishon consisted of 2 commandments. One commandment was prescriptive. People used to say that the commandments fall into 2 categories, positive and negative. I have a very hard time to say that we have negative mitzvahs. Right? When you take the word negative and you say, oh, that person's negative, do you want to hang out with him? No, you don't want to hang out with somebody negative. So I try not to use the term negative mitzvahs. We have prescriptive mitzvahs, commandments that prescribe certain behavior. For example, put on tefillin, that's a prescriptive. Call it in Hebrew mitzvahs aseh. And then we have prohibitive mitzvot. Don't do. Don't drink blood. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. I know it never crossed your mind, go by a slaughterhouse and the guy, got any blood left? Yeah, there's a pool of blood over there. Ooh. Right. It's one of those wonderful mitzvot that you get credit, right? And you don't want to eat it. And you're doing the mitzvah. Like eating all these bugs and all of that, which are disgusting. Torah says you're not allowed to eat them, right? Great. Boom. Hey, I don't want to eat lettuce with worms. Do you? All right, I told a friend of mine who's not Jewish, I said, he says, I have a lettuce salad, have some. I'm like, I can't eat it. Why not? Because there's bugs in it. He goes, what? There's no bugs in here. I said, look. And, that was a tough day for him. But I waited till there was only a little bit of salad left.
But there were bugs really.
What? You could see it. They were swimming in the Thousand Island sauce.
There
Rabbi, if you look at our salad in our Samayach, something.
You understand what you're doing now. You're in the video, and now that's it. You have to do tshuva now to the shiva, to the chefs, to everybody that is handling the kashrus, because it's motzi shemra. Yeah, this is a big deal. You're wondering, are there worms in lettuce?
No, I'm wondering about the question that you proposed, that you asked about how come Judaism was not given to other people?
Yeah.
Could it be that if everybody was practicing Judaism, what's the point of life?
What's the point of life if everybody's practicing Judaism? So, what's the point of us living when we practice Judaism?
Well, we're a minority right now. We're not sure.
But we're not practicing Judaism because of them. We're practicing Judaism because we want to be close to Hashem.
We have to be a light to them, though.
We do?
We have to be a light to other nations.
Well, I'd say if everyone's Jewish, then there'd be no free will, because everyone is commanded to do the same thing. And it's harder to be Jewish when there's people that aren't.
It's harder to be Jewish than there are people who are not. You know what? It might be true. Yitzchak, try to stay with me. It might be true. But I think an argument could be made that if everybody were Jewish, it would be even harder, because everybody wants to be different. Everybody wants to feel, I'm not like everybody else. There is that core yetzer in us to make us, we want to be different, you know. And it's always sort of a discussion with kids, when Be'ezah Hashem you have your own kids, about what they dress. You know, they always want to express themselves in their own sort of way, but they end up that all of them look the same, right? So when you have this, when I was in public school, high school, you had the people who were dressed like surfers. You had people who were the gothic, you know. Yeah, so you want to be special, but you're like that group. All of you look the same, you know, long hair, you know, walking around like this with a skateboard. Okay, whatever, that's who you are. And then these people, they're all black with a black thing and a white face and listening to this metal music that, okay, listen, you think you're different? You guys are all the same. So it's true. I think it could be that it would be, the Bechira, free will would be, or it wouldn't disappear, because you live in Eretz Yisrael. You are living in the land of Israel. And you see that it's not so easy to be a Jew. When there's most people around, you're still Jewish. And you could live in a religious neighborhood, a Torah observant neighborhood, and it's still difficult. Because we all have Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara doesn't abandon you if you live in this type of community or that type of community. If you're living on your own, if you're not. People think when they come to yeshiva, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, doesn't come in here. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to shock you. The Yetzer Hara is sitting with us in here, learning Torah with us. And the Yetzer Hara is going to use the Torah that he's learning against you. When? When I'm not around. That's how it works. So I'm not so sure that that's a good svara. Not so sure. Not so sure. So, we continue. So what's the answer to the king's question? The king's question again, why wasn't the Torah given to the entire world? Says Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, don't you think it would have been better if all animals could speak? Imagine that. Right? Wait, just think about this. Right? You walk by the cat and the cat goes, hey, what's for lunch today? I can't give you food. Come on. Get something. Right? You're walking in the street and there's a dog and you go, what you looking at? you've read too many books. And so he says like this, you're saying something that you forgot. Which is what? That the descent, that Adam HaRishon had this special ability, this koach, this ability to connect to Hashem. And it was called Amar Ilahi, Ha'inyan Elohi, the divine matter. Some sort of, we called it, what did we say it was? I gave you like an ability to connect to that satellite, to get your, not prophecy, but you know when you have your phone, right, it has a chip in it.
Yeah.
And that chip allows you to connect and you could see the entire universe, all in the palm of your hand. So you had, from Adam HaRishon, had this chip to connect to Hashem. And that transferred from Adam to his son, Seth. Then from Seth to his son, that is, you had one per generation. Until it came to Yaakov Avinu, and from Yaakov Avinu, it entered all 12 sons. So they had this. And then we have this, one second, we have this also. Now, somebody spoke while I was speaking. So no, let's just wait till I'm done. I only have a few more minutes, and then you can ask me after class. Now, so he says, the Inyan Eloki started in one family. Every one person per family. And he would receive this light. And the other ones did not receive this. Until you get to Yaakov Avinu. And that chip, that spiritual ability that they had, allowed them to become almost a different species. An angelic being. Could survive 40 days and 40 nights without food. Can walk through fire. Wonderful things that we saw that Moshe Rabbeinu was doing. And everybody who wants to become a prophet, not everybody gets there, but some do. And we know, because the Tanakh tells us, that there were schools for prophets, that the people who were working on themselves to perfect themselves, to become pure and holy through their connection to the prophets, they were able to receive some level. There's different levels of prophecy, it's very important to remind. But they received some message from God. And so he says, so how does this answer the question? So he continues and explains the following. He says, when the person reaches this level, he is separated from mankind. He's no longer human to an extent. He's no longer human. And their entire goal in life, and this is really what the Torah is about, Judaism is about, he says, is to reach a level where the soul, the divine soul, disconnects from the body, connects to God, can see the supernal realms, and achieve what we call immortality. Immortality.
Dying.
Immortality. Not dying.
That sounds like a description of death.
Not at all.
It does. What?
Not at all. No, just wait. So he says, if there is Torah, that the person could go through this process and learn how to reach this level, right? Then the Torah is open to every human being. Every human being has the choice whether he wants to become a servant of the God of Israel, accept the Torah, and reach this level. Now the question is, in Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, it sounds like this chip is passed down genetically. And therefore, if the person converted, he wouldn't necessarily get it. But according to the Zohar HaKadosh, the Zohar says when a person converts to Judaism, when they get into the mikveh, when they're going fully in, they will get a brand new neshama. That is, they download a completely different neshama with all of the latest gadgets and apps and super speed to serve Hashem in the way that Hashem wants.
So one can convert to Judaism in like later stage in life and basically be sinless. Like
I'm sorry?
like guy converts to Judaism at 5 years old.
At 75, imagine you have one of these Hamas people decides in prison to convert to Judaism. Sincere, full, I'm sorry, converts. And he now is considered a brand new person. So do you let him out of prison?
No,
It's a question.
I mean depends.
Depends or adult underwear? It's a complicated question. There are halachic implications to this. There are theological implications to this. Yeah. It's true. But you should know, the more a person is steeped, is fully connected to sin, he can't get out. The longer you are in tumah, in impurity, the harder and harder it is for you to leave. So if you say a guy converts 75, he had lots of years in impurity. That's not easy. That's a big life change. Yes, sir.
We're in a world that's so easy to sin in. So, like, is that the test of free will? And like, that's what makes us more Jewish.
Start that again. Say that again.
So, Jews live in a world where it's like really accessible to sin.
It was always like that.
Yeah, so I'm saying, like, is that a test, like, to make us like closer to God and more Jewish?
You could say that. You could say that. I think our challenge is a little different than the challenge that we had, let's say, 500, 700 years ago. 500 years ago, 700 years ago, there was a very clear distinction between Jews and non-Jews. Let's say, take just Europe. It was very, very clear. Most people in Europe were illiterate. Most Jews were literate. Most people were, when you read about medieval society, it's not a place you want to hang out. Whereas you see in the yeshivot and what's happening and the Jews that are writing and telling you about their society is a very, very different society to an extent. So that was very, very different. So a Jew would never think of, I don't want to go like this. Today, most Jews who don't live in a religious environment, when they live, let's say, in Nebraska, it's very hard. How are you different from your neighbors? So they have a Christmas tree and you have a Hanukkah bush or whatever it is. Like, what's the difference? That is, we all, growing up in America, you have non-Jewish friends. There's not much different. We play basketball, they play basketball. So with assimilation, with this sort of an open hug by American society, it made it very difficult because you have to make a choice to be Jewish. You have to actually work at it. Because if you don't, slowly you disappear. And that's what happened to millions of Jews in America. That they've assimilated away. So, and you see that the numbers of Jewish people who strongly identify with Judaism is going down. And now with all this sort of anti-Semitism and the college campuses and what's happening because of the massacre that occurred on October 7th, I'm hoping that there's some Jews who are asking themselves the tough questions to say, if this is their reaction to us being victims, where do we go from here? See you tomorrow. Mincha.